This is Atticus. You might know my mom, Heather, from Shine.fm. This is the Shine.fm Momcast. Take it away.
So I'm joined today by Jen Stevens. She is a mom. I always like to say that because we moms have multiple hats that we wear. She's also an author of a new book called Cleanish. Jen, thanks for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, definitely a mom. And my son, who's my oldest son, turns 24 tomorrow. Can you believe it? I know. I don't have any babies anymore. They're all grown up people.
How many have you launched? All of them? Do you have any more at home?
Well, okay, moms. I've got a 22-year-old who came back home. He's home with us. The 24-year-old, though, he's married and living in San Francisco with his wife. He got married right out of college. They're so happy. And he met her in college. And you know, when you find your person early, you do. But the 22-year-old, he went off for a little while and came on back because it wasn't as exciting as he thought it would be. And guess what? For all the moms listening, one day they will come home and say, guess what? You were right about a lot of things. So
if you promise that will happen, you promise that will happen.
If you've got teenagers, and look, this younger one who's 22 now, it wasn't until he was like 19 that he turned into a human. So
because I have 3 kids. I have an 18-year-old girl who we just launched into college. I have a 17-year-old boy and a
she's not launched yet. Sorry. I hate to tell you this.
You're like, oh, back it up, girlfriend. Back it up.
Look, no, bless your heart. But
well, it was the closest thing to launching that I've done. How about that?
It felt launching. I know. But look, we launched this one off to college and he boomeranged back, like I said. But does your 18-year-old think you're smart yet?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
But she's definitely gotten the idea that maybe I know what I'm talking about for some things. The boys really know, not really. So,
and they're 7. I'm sorry that I interrupted you. They're 17 and
15.
Oh, the 15-year-old. You probably don't know anything. You'll get smarter in about 4 years. So
I'm so glad because there's times I really don't feel like I'm very smart. And all of a sudden I'm ready for that moment where everything becomes clear and I'm smarter.
Well, there is nothing better in the world than having an adult child that you like as a person. So that's coming.
Yes.
You forget about the teenage years.
Yes. You know, I actually find, and I say this on the show quite often, that I really do love the teenage years because I was not the baby. I did not love the baby years. I did not love the toddler years. I love that I get a front row seat to who God is creating them to be. Yeah. And I get to help mold and shape that just a little bit. So
I'm with you on the baby and the toddler years. I feel like once I get to be a grandparent, which is, one day that'll happen, no rush, but I think I will enjoy the baby and toddler years differently. But when you're new in it yourself, it just all felt so overwhelming. So in Cleanish, I tell the story of the one who's 22 and back at home. When he was a toddler, he was, I was a teacher. I taught elementary school for 28 years till I was fortunate enough to be able to retire and spend my time writing and podcasting and managing my intermittent fasting community. I was a teacher for 28 years, was great at classroom management. So imagine my shock when my toddler son starts having trouble and gets kicked out of first one daycare, then the other daycare because he was having uncontrollable tantrums. And I'm like, what's happening? I mean, our other son had gone through this daycare and been just fine. We were a family of the daycare and they're like, you got to go, never come back. And I'm like, well, that's a little hard to hear. So I was really, it's funny. I'm laughing at it now, but he had uncontrollable tantrums and I didn't understand what was going on or why. And we finally enrolled him. It was actually a private Christian school that we put him in. They had a 3-year-old room. So we put him in it. They went all the way up through elementary school, but they did have a 3-year-old room. Right before they kicked us out too, his teacher said, he's a sweet boy. He's a kind boy, but something about him just changes. Have you thought about what he's eating?
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what? No, that sounds crazy. She said, what did he have for breakfast? And he had this Cat in the Hat cereal with red dye in it. It made the cat in the hat turn red. I mean,
I love the way you describe that in the book, because it's like, of course I would buy this for my kids. This is the greatest breakfast ever.
It's fortified. It's got vitamins, right? I had no idea. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I went home and started searching on the internet about red dye and behavior because that sounded wacky to me and like nothing I'd ever heard before. As someone who had been teaching by this point, I'd been teaching for over 10 years. I remember one student I had whose mom said she can't have red dye. She's allergic. I just thought it was an allergy. Turns out it was behavior for her too. I didn't know it till I finally asked the mom. She's like, "Oh yeah, it makes her go crazy." I'm like, I had no idea. So I I started researching and I found something called the Feingold Association. And the Feingold Association was founded back in the 1970s, even though I'd never heard of it. And the physician who founded it started seeing in his practice children who had, they called it hyperactivity back then. We know it as ADD or ADHD, depending on, whether you're ADD with the distracted version or DHD with the hyperactivity version.
Right.
And I mean, for all I know, they could be calling it something else now because I retired from teaching in 2018, but we called it ADHD at the time. He found a link between food additives, such as artificial flavors, artificial colors, preservatives, and behavior. And so the organization was started to help parents make sense of this. And I'm going to tell you, when we were able to control what my son ate and also the chemicals that we used, he was like a super sensitive canary in the coal mine. He also reacted negatively to, like, for example, air fresheners, things that you smell, things that you put on your skin. He had a problem with because, things go through the skin and get into your body as well. So his body just reacted to all sorts of toxins that were coming in any way, shape, or form, just the artificial chemicals.
Yeah.
But when we kept those things away from him, he was a different child. And when he would have something he shouldn't have, or like if we went into a house that had brand new carpeting, for example, and that carpeting is off-gassing, we've all smelled it. Like, imagine a carpet showroom, you know what that smells like? It would make him go insane. And that sounds ridiculous until you've seen it happen. Like, I remember the time my dad finally believed me. We were at their house. We were there to celebrate his birthday, and my family was, trying to be on board with it. My sister had baked 2 cakes for the party, and one of them was made from real ingredients that didn't have anything artificial, and our son could have it. And the other cake was what my dad had wanted, and it had stuff in it that he couldn't have.
Right.
And so Will knew that one of the cakes was going to be safe for him. So he, when no one was looking, grabbed a fingerful full of the icing. Then he started acting like a lunatic. But it was the wrong cake. And my dad you could see the switch flip in my son's eyes. And my dad said, "Oh, I get it now." And that was when my whole family became a believer. It wasn't just the wacky thing that Jen was trying, and like teachers saw it. Like one day it's when he went to public pre-K, and when because they're not going to kick you out of that, thank goodness. But
right.
His
you were good on that one.
Well, and plus we knew what we were doing by that point. But his teacher in the public pre-K, she'd also been our older son's teacher, and she loved him as well. And so we loved her a lot. Her name was Miss Sarah, and she was great. She said one day he was in the bathroom and the custodian sprayed a bunch of stuff, and then boop, he acted crazy. She's like, "You're right." So when people saw it in action, it was just remarkable. So I talk about that in the introduction of Cleanish. But for any moms who are listening, if your child has uncontrollable or strange behavior changes that are like a light switch is flipped and you can't figure out why, it could be a similar kind of a thing. I'm just here to spread that message.
Right. Well, because that's what I loved about, there's a lot of things that you read as a mom, but I always feel like there's validity when it comes from a mom who's experienced it. And I'm sure there's some moms out there that are like, I raised both of these kids the same. Why is one acting? Because you say in the book that you changed the diet of both the kids, even though your older son didn't seem to have these problems, but you saw some behavior changes in him as well.
We did. And it was most remarkable when he had to take some cough syrup. When he was in kindergarten, the older one was taking cough syrup, and it had red dye in it. And his teacher brought him down to my classroom, his kindergarten teacher. That's never good. If you're a parent who's also a teacher, when the 2 times that kid got brought down to my classroom, one time was when he had an eraser stuck in his ear. And the other time is when, that time was funny, by the way. She's like, "Cal, tell your mama what happened." That never sounds good. He's like, "There's an eraser in my ear." I'm like, "What's that?" We had to go to the emergency room. They have great tools to dig erasers out of ears. Yes. Just FYI, if anyone needs to know, they could get anything out of anywhere. Anyway, But the second time was when he was acting like a lunatic after having that red dye. He had thrown his work on the floor and stamped his foot and wouldn't do it. And he was the kid who, brilliant child. He went on to skip first grade. And so I'm not just, I'm bragging mom, but the teacher said she had to give him his work last or he would be done before the other kids, before she'd finished passing out the papers. But this day he had refused to do any work, stomped his feet. And I'm like, wonder if it's that red dye in this cough syrup, because he never acted like that. Right. That was not his behavior, but he had been clean from it because we had changed everything. Right. And then just bam. So even kids who are, quote, normal, like Cal, it made a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm a believer. My husband gave me a lot of pushback when we made all these changes. Like we had been buying the cheap stuff for everything. And now all of a sudden I want to buy $8 shampoo. Right. He's like, what?
Wait, and tell us what he does, because I was like, he thought you were crazy, not because of that though, but tell us when you started to make all these changes, you say in the book what he does too, what his job is.
He is a PhD medicinal chemist. He studies drug design. And when he was getting his PhD, he worked with a professor who did transdermal medication delivery, which is like, a nicotine patch or birth control patch or whatever you put on that goes into your skin. Right. But it was just new to him to think that it could affect behavior. Now, of course, it makes a lot more sense. We know chemicals affect behavior. And if you don't believe me, go, do some shots of alcohol. I'm not recommending this, but it's going to change your behavior. We know that things we introduce in our bodies change our behavior. We know this, that there's medications people take that can change your behavior. So when you really think about it, it's not a shock when you realize, things we put in our bodies, and not everyone reacts the same way to the same things. We're so very different. But that really got me on the path of realizing the chemicals in our environment are not necessarily safe just because they're there. Right. And they're not necessarily good for everybody. And it got me thinking, what else do we not, what else have they, not told us the truth about?
Right. So. Well, and there's even, I wanted to mention this quote because this really spoke to me, and it's in the beginning of the book, but you said, because there's a lot of moms, and I'm one of them, who have struggled with weight, especially since we have had our kids, and not quite knowing what to believe, what's true, what's really, all the diet things that you hear and all the things that different people do. And you say, did the whole world suddenly decide to stop trying to maintain a healthy weight? Did we all just give up, or has something changed? No, we haven't given up, but we are confused about how to solve the problem. And that really spoke to me, because I do feel like even a woman at 48, premenopausal, that I don't know what's right. I don't know what I should be doing. And that you talk a little bit later in the book about how, you've seen so many people try the move more,
eat less, move more. Yeah.
And it doesn't work. So let's talk about this concept of what does it look like to really start to change what we eat, what we consume, what the chemicals are, because that seems overwhelming to me. I'm just going to be super honest, because I'm 48 and I've grew up just kind of like what you were talking about. We had, all kinds of crazy stuff that you thought was healthy, but wasn't.
Mm-hmm. I'm the crazy person that gave my children Yoo-Hoo in their sippy cup because it had more vitamins and minerals than chocolate milk. Okay. Right. I'm just putting it out there. I didn't know, but I'm 52 and I'm on the other side of menopause, and I lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting, and I've kept it off now for over 7 years.
Wow.
So when I started off, I was not eating clean or eating mostly clean. The subtitle of my book is Eat Mostly Clean, Live Mainly Clean, and Unlock Your Body's Natural Ability to Self-Clean. Intermittent fasting is in that last part, your body's natural ability to self-clean. Although the book Cleanish is not an intermittent fasting book. So you do not have to do intermittent fasting to start it.
Right.
I promise. It's all about, making the steps to clean things up. Mm-hmm. And our food choices and what we put in our body makes a great deal of difference. Just because I'm going to say a word. Have you heard the word obesogens before?
I have not.
Well, the beginning of it, obesogen. Right. They're chemicals that were coming into our body. They're coming in through, like, for example, food contact chemicals that might be in the lining of the can, or it's the pan that you're cooking in, or the plastic, whatever, and other things. Those are just some examples of it. Food contact chemicals, all these things could be obesogens, meaning they impact how our bodies store fat, how our bodies release fat. They react how our hormones work. Some of these chemicals can have they might block hormone receptors or mimic hormones. They're called endocrine disruptors. So they disrupt our endocrine system. And all of those things have this whole cascading effect. So our bodies are not functioning very well metabolically. So the whole point of the book Cleanish is you're going to work on what you're putting into your body, putting fewer toxins in. You're also going to encourage your body to manage the toxins that do come in. I mean, we can't live in a bubble. It's impossible. Perfection is not required. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But because we can't do it. I mean, even at the bubble, is the bubble toxic? I don't know. It's
right. Yeah, exactly.
But our bodies are great at naturally detoxifying if we get out of the way and let our bodies do it. Intermittent fasting is one piece of the puzzle if you're interested in it. But if not, we can support our body's self-cleaning mechanisms by just eating real food. Like, for example, nutrients. And I'm not talking about taking a vitamin pill,
right?
Because that's not what our body needs. Our body needs real food. Real food helps our liver work. Real food helps our kidneys work. I don't have a supplement to sell you. In fact, please don't buy supplements.
Right.
Eat real food.
Right.
And, the stuff in that carrot is going to help your body to detox better than a fancy detox shake ever could.
Right.
It's really, this is a Christian show.
Right.
God gave us what we need.
Right.
Man has made it unnatural and crazy.
Right,
so go back to what God gave us and stick with those things.
Right. How do you do that? No. So like with food, that makes sense. You go and, probably buy, I live in Michigan. We have farmers markets. You can go and you can grow your own food. What does it look like on the scale of like shampoos, soaps? Like, how do you know what you can put in or cleaning even?
That is such a great question. And we're so confused because of the practice called greenwashing. Companies are fantastic at greenwashing. That's putting a label on there that looks pure and natural and making us think that it's a healthy choice or, clean, non-toxic choice when really that they hide all sorts of things in the label under words like fragrance or natural. I mean, arsenic is natural, but do you really want that?
Right.
No, just because it's natural doesn't mean you want it. Okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The good news is you don't have to become a champion label reader at all. You don't have to do it. So there are apps that can help you. One of them is the Environmental Working Group app. You can download it for free and you can find safe products. You can scan barcodes. You can scroll through a list. Like I was trying to find a mouthwash that was clean one day and I just went to the mouthwash category and started going down the list.
Nice.
And one of the mouthwashes that was very highly ranked as safe was Listerine Original, the kind my grandmother used. So would you have thought that was a natural choice or a better choice? No. So you can't always tell. Like another example, cleaning products, the product CLR. Have you ever seen CLR? Doesn't that look like a terrible toxic product?
Yes.
Very safe product.
Huh.
They do the opposite of greenwashing on their label. They need to redesign it to make it look more natural.
It looks like it's really scary. Actually.
It looks scary. So they need some help from the greenwashers to make their product look better.
That's right. It's so interesting. I'm so glad to know that there are resources. Cause like I said, I feel like as a busy mom, it's somewhat, going to the grocery store, buying vegetables, that's different. But to be able to say, we're going to make some changes in these other areas. Like you said,
it doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. You just get your brands that you're used to. And there's so many more products available right now than there were when I was, going through this in 2002 or whatever the year was, 2003. It was so much harder back then.
Yeah.
But now, it's so easy, especially with the internet. Like, for example, I use a brand of cleaning products called Branch Basics. They're fantastic. And everything is safe and clean. It starts from one concentrate and you use it for everything. And it's less expensive than what I was buying before.
That's nice. That's nice.
It is. So it doesn't have to be expensive. And you just have the concentrate when you notice you're starting to get low on the concentrate because you fill it up in the bottles yourself and you can add a essential oil to give it the smell you want. But when you see the concentrates getting low, you just you order some more.
Right.
And then you never run out. And like I said, it's not as expensive as what I had been buying. And I know that it's safe.
And I feel like our culture has taught and with some of the marketing that, oh, it's to buy organic or to buy or it's going to be more expensive. So to know that you've lived this out in a way and you found ways that you can do it. And I think especially for parents who have kids who have some of those maybe hyperactivity issues or those things that have like the ADHD, that might actually be something that would be super helpful to know that it's that easy, to access that. So
it was life-changing for us. I'm sure we could have gotten all sorts of diagnoses, and I am not faulting any parents who do have, who did go the medication route, because we were desperate. And I guarantee if it had not been for that teacher who told me, look at what he's eating, my next step would have been the doctor's office. I'm like, is my child psychotic? What's going on? I mean, I'm not making light of children that are, but we would have probably gotten a mental illness diagnosis because of the way it switched, the switch was flipped and he was a different child. All we needed to do was change his diet and change the chemicals and the environment the best we could. Again, sometimes though, you walked into a carpet store and he would act crazy and we'd have to go out and sit in the car, whatever. But so I'm not saying that everything can be solved with this, but for us, I mean, we never had to medicate him ever. We made it all the way through. And I know that we would have had a different route. And so again, I'm not blaming any parent that makes that choice, because I was probably about to make that choice too, until we just had this person who, thank goodness, Miss Karen was her name. Thank goodness for her. It changed our lives.
That's awesome. Well, the book is called Cleanish. You do talk about in depth a little bit more about unlocking our body's natural ability to clean, but you do talk too about the cleaning products and eating mostly clean as well. So Jen Stevens, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your book with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Heather. I've loved being here.